from an undisclosed location in the Great Western Desert in the land of the free and autonomous Native American people. The 2024 presidential campaign in its time to return all US land back to their right's owners. This is the Ben Zion Podcast.
Welcome back to the Ben Zion program. I'm your host, Ben Zion, and I'm going to talk again about the same thing I talked about on the last show. I'm wearing a similar shirt, but not the same. Act Now on Climate. And I'm going to talk about these people, AI ethicists, ostensibly, who are overwhelmingly, people that have public-facing opinions that you've probably seen, are overwhelmingly fascist sympathizers or fascist operatives. People that have no interest in, say, acting now on climate. Emerging technology of greater and greater strength has a potential, although no promise, to deflect many of Earth's grand challenges. These people who are X-risk experts, they sometimes talk about that, but by and large, their function is to stop people talking about that and to serve the Central Intelligence Agency with CIA talking points. You say, oh, really, the CIA? And the CIA is controlling everybody. It's a little bit of a stretch, isn't it? No, it's not. The United States media has been captured by fascist forces. Films, television, everything is run through offices that have oversight, script approval on almost all of these things. The fact that you don't want to recognize that is born out of the same impulse that drives you to, support someone like Bernie Sanders, who says he wants to change the economy, but he wants to change about 10% of the economy, not including abolishing the military-industrial complex that's responsible for not only the number one contribution to climate change. The United States military is the number one polluter in the world, and not only passively hosting almost all of the world's super polluters, the corporations that should be done away with, but also this military-industrial complex basically has a one function on the world stage, going well beyond that, which is to enforce the economic system wherein the planet is killed. You, a liberal, somebody who's like, Bernie Sanders seems okay, are overwhelmingly supporting that to a higher degree than even someone like Bernie Sanders, who is fighting for a very, very limited set of things that already exist in other parts of the fascist West. The other parts of the fascist West do have some kind of public health service. The United States does not, effectively. You're worse than Bernie Sanders, almost all of you. Now, if you're subscribing to this show and watching this, maybe you're not worse than Bernie Sanders. Maybe you're someone who believes in the ideas of using emerging technology to build a humane and sustainable economic system. Maybe even somebody who's willing to fight for that. That's what a revolutionary communist is, someone who's willing to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system. Any other communist is somebody who's at least willing to say, I stand for a humane and sustainable economic system. And all the rest of you are huge pieces of shit helping fascists kill the planet. Sorry to inform. And we're talking again about Eliezer Yudkowsky, one of those very same people. This is from Futurism.com. Is Futurism.com supporting generally a humane and sustainable economic system? No. Are they supporting fighting for a humane economic system? Hell fucking no. Does that mean that everybody who's ever contributed to that operation is a fascist sympathizer? No. As I say on the show, maybe 99.9% of tech people of any who are public-facing in any way at all are fascist sympathizers. There's 0.1%, 1 in 1,000 who aren't. Good for them. They still have a lot of photos of them hugging somebody who is a fascist. So they're not, I guess, people who are actually fighting for a humane and sustainable economic system. They're people more like Paris Marx, who I follow, who says all of the right things, except that we should fight for this, really. It's not a revolutionary personality. And it's not an easy thing to be in a fascist country. You can be summarily executed for even saying things even close to this. But it is nevertheless, you're being summarily executed in slow motion by fascists killing the planet. You fucking coward. So Eliezer Yudkowsky is pivoting into this more fascist role. He works for Machine Intelligence Research Institute, which is, like almost all tech organizations, seems to be to a high degree a CIA cutout. And so when CIA calls and says to you, hey, a fascist sympathetic tech geek, it's time to pivot to talking about how not how technology could be good, but how technology is actually super, super bad and is going to create hell on earth. Why are they pivoting to this? Because more and more people are saying what Ben Zion is saying, that we could use technology to create a humane and sustainable economic system. That's not a very complicated idea, but relatively few people actually say this, but more and more people are, and it's becoming more and more a distinct possibility that that could actually happen in a world transitioning to artificial general intelligence and then quite quickly to artificial superintelligence. That is your future, the next 5 years. So futurism.com, they know these things, but they're a little more, they're not substantively less beholden to fascist might than Eliezer Yudkowsky. And nevertheless, they're going to criticize Eliezer Yudkowsky in this article, and I'm going to criticize them a little bit. And that's the most exciting thing that I could think of to do on April Fool's Day. As a longtime researcher into HEI, Yudkowsky says he's less concerned about human competitive AI than what happens after. Key thresholds may not be obvious, he wrote. We definitely can't calculate in advance what happens when, and it currently seems unimaginable, quite imaginable, that a research lab would cross critical lines without noticing. Once criticized in Bloomberg for being an AI doomer, Yudkowsky says he's not the only person steeped in these issues who believes that. Yeah. He's not the only CIA asset out there tricking people into not supporting their own interests. That's who these people are, right? Artificial intelligence is not the existential risk. The existence of the fascist West possessing much of artificial intelligence is the existential risk. Fascists are killing the planet. If fascists have things like this, they'll just kill the planet that much faster. And you say, "Oh, you don't know that, Ben?" Yeah, I do. That's what's happened. That I talked about this at a little more length on the last show. That's the story of the 20th century and the United States' rise to power therein. Before that rise to power, the planet was not dying. Now it is dying due to advanced technology. That's all written into the record, and written into the record also that the United States has automated a good number of sectors and not seen benefits to people in the course of that automation, seen benefits to managerial class, the bourgeois class, and seen benefits to the super wealthy. So a small fraction of the population. Everyone else's life expectancy has dropped off a cliff in that same time frame. That automation has increased. Their lives are not easier. Their lives are not better. They're not safer or happier or healthier. That is what fascism is. Just because you, a dog shit piece of filth liberal, support fascism, doesn't mean that fascism is supporting you. All they're doing is working to kill you. And they're killing your planet. Eliezer Yudkowsky will obfuscate that by introducing this alien force, artificial superintelligence. The artificial superintelligence is possessed by the fascist West to a high degree. And not overwhelmingly. If you really do an analysis of these sectors, an awful lot of it is being developed at a quicker pace outside of the imperial core, most notably in China. When Eliezer Yudkowsky says that he's concerned about this existential risk, he means he's concerned that the United States will lose a war. And the United States should lose that war because the United States is doing all these things that I said, and they are protecting private wealth at the expense of the quality of life of humankind, and also at the expense of the planet itself, murdering the planet. But in this scenario, where every human being on Earth has access to artificial general intelligence, can organize with one another to different kinds of goals than those of the imperial core. That's a world where those whose only real task is protecting a small fraction of people and harming other people, and seeming as if they're not doing so, will be quite quickly overwhelmed. So China will use advanced interfaces and algorithms to bring more and more of the world's people together, and the United States will become increasingly backwater, a place of less value and importance, until hopefully it becomes brought to heel as a violent place, brought to heel by all the other powers of the earth. That's about the best case scenario for the development of artificial superintelligence. Other scenarios involve an awful lot of people on this continent or elsewhere dying. But that's an inevitable situation when you're looking at capitalism's climate apocalypse. So Eliezer Yudkowsky is kind of a beat poet, a fear-mongering weirdo. He doesn't talk about any of those things. But let's see if he can form a coherent thought in all of this. He has the receipts to back it up, too, citing an expert survey in which a bunch of the respondents were deeply concerned about the existential risks posed by AI. These risks aren't, Yudkowsky wrote in Time, just remote possibilities. It's not that you can't, in principle, survive creating something much smarter than you, he mused. It's that it would require precision and preparation and new scientific insights, and probably not having AI systems composed of giant inscrutable arrays of fractional numbers. Yeah. The hyper-capitalist trash landscape that you see around you has helped to increase the pace at which the planet's dying in recent years, and he does not see the possibility of better uses for this because people assume that the economy is just capitalists killing the planet. Westerners, fascist sympathizers. That is not what the economy ought to be. It's not what the economy will be in the era of superintelligence. But that requires that we are willing to slay the demon. The demon is not, as Elon Musk says, artificial superintelligence. The demon is fascist power and techno-fascist artificial superintelligence. And you all are going to have to do some pretty fancy footwork to outmaneuver that monster like that. You seem pretty dumb, if I'm being honest. And that's borne out by a drop in IQ. Not the best measure, but what seems to be a measurable drop in intelligence of people in North America, literally just in the last 2 years, according to a recent study. That's the first time that this has ever happened. Generally, people on this continent, for better or worse, have gotten a little more knowledgeable, perhaps a little more canny, but that's not been the case in recent years, and there's now statistics, such as they are, to demonstrate that. So my advice is, if you're not too interested in being a fascist, a sympathizer, a person on the wrong side of history, is to leave the Imperial Core, and to maybe try to bring this message to folks elsewhere, that workers of the world must unite, that we must use these most powerful tools. Emerging technology is the most powerful tools ever to exist to build a humane and sustainable economic system. We must do that in defiance of countries like the United States and the various lackeys that it has elsewhere in the Imperial Core. So Yudkowsky says to just shut it all down. The headline for this piece is a machine learning expert, this Miri nerd, calls for bombing data centers to stop rise of AI. Bombing things in service to fascist power. That's just like a half-wit white nationalist, Christian nationalist blowing up hospitals to stop abortion. I've personally known a couple of people like this. In just a slightly better world, people like Elias Yudkowsky, people like that, who are not dissimilar, would be disabused of these ideas at early age. Just a slightly better world. Not a world that sustains transhumans, and not a world that sustains superintelligence, just a slightly better world. People like this would be disabused of this notion at a young age, or they would spend the rest of their life in a rubber room drinking pudding through a straw. But instead, those are the people who run the show. The dumbest people you know. I say this on the show. You think you've met some stupid people in your life. You've not met people as stupid as transhumanists, because they're not really thinking about what the implications of the existence of superintelligence and the existence of advanced interfaces are for humankind, creating a collectivist phenomena well beyond that of the 19th or 20th century. And they oppose that, and they hem and haw, they hedge their bets, they move the goalposts, but when the moment that some people start getting their marching orders from the CIA, and the moment that maybe there's a minor cultural shift, a backlash against technology in service to fascist power, then they all jump on this bandwagon. They're no longer techno-optimists. Now they are the Luddites that they have been saying that they dislike all of this time. And that's not Elias Yudkowsky exactly, but again, you can see people take a picture with him, somebody who's a techno-socialist, the picture next to Elias Yudkowsky. So are you really then a techno-socialist if everybody that you work with and uphold in other ways is a fascist? Maybe not. ChatGPT, the 6 month cessation of the development of GPT-4 to GPT-5 particularly is what they're talking about. But it's a huge number of companies now putting these things to use and developing them further in various ways. So a 6 month cessation of this in just in the few places that Washington D.C. can kind of force people to cease doing this. I'm gonna filter all the urine out of the swimming pool. This child urinated in the swimming pool and filter all the urine out. Okay, I can't do that. You can waste a lot of time pretending to do that. This person is a Luddite, but Luddites were people who genuinely were interested in protecting artisans in the face of technological change. Elias Yudkowsky is not that person, right? Maybe if there were an Elias Yudkowsky in another part of the world, not in a U.S.-run institution, you might say that this person might be a little more credible, but this guy's not credible. He's a CIA asset, and all of this, I think, can be pretty well disregarded. But that's not to say that you're not in incredible danger of the kind that Elias Yudkowsky is suggesting. I hope that you will consider taking a more revolutionary stance, revolutionary action, and incorporating the ideas and implementation of advanced technologies of various kinds into the fight for building a humane and sustainable economic system. But as I've said before, if you move to another part of the world, that's what does Peter Thiel do? He's got a compound in New Zealand and another one somewhere else. So if shit gets too hot, he'll go to New Zealand. Maybe that's a place that will survive a nuclear war. Things of this kind. But Peter Thiel, of course, is one of these people who's most responsible, far more so than Elias Yudkowsky, who's just kind of a dumbass, for this set of problems. These are people who have captured tech on behalf of fascists. So now we're saying, tech is dangerous because it's dangerous to fascists. But if you helped, if you didn't want that to happen, maybe you shouldn't have been a fucking fascist in the first place. Shut down all the large GPU clusters, the large computer farms where the most powerful AIs are refined, he wrote. Shut down all the large training runs. Put a ceiling on how much computing power anyone is allowed to use in training an AI system, and move it downward over the coming years to compensate for more efficient training algorithms. No exceptions for governments and militaries. Yeah, I'm sure that's really what he's thinking. This effort to filter the pee out of the pool that he's suggesting, of course, it's in service to governments and militaries of the fascist West. Of course it is. Because the only thing that we're talking about here is ordinary working people having the ability to do with less resources per capita what the institutions of overwhelming fascist might are able to do. And that means that there could be a revolution against the people who are killing the planet. And let's hope that there's a couple of you who are smarter than Ben Zion who've maybe figured out a way to bring the U.S. and fascist West to heel without killing 100 million people in the process. A few million people have already died who didn't need to die in the fascist West and elsewhere in the world of coronavirus, which is arguably the first wave of this kind of fighting, an earlier wave of this. That's to say, not fighting, genocidal action. Every time the United States accidentally kills a few million of its people through social murder, through engineered negligence, it will tend to coincide with times when there's an uptick, as there has been in recent decades, of dissatisfaction with the United States, possibility of even armed insurrection against the United States. So, in that scenario, there's a real possibility of bad things happening, and the U.S.'s response as a fascist country is to commit genocide without seeming to do so. So how many more times will they get away with doing that to kill 100 million people in the West to maintain their base of power before they shrink to such a size that they are forced to come to heel? hopefully some of you are smart enough to figure out how to make that happen without killing many more millions of people than those that have already died in recent decades because of the fascist West. This is an article from Psychology Today. Is that the most the finest of intellectual institutions? It's not worse than futurism.com by my estimation of its politics and overall messaging. But it's definitely not better either. This is from Moses Ma, and he says, "Enjoy the singularity, how to be optimistic about the future." Okay, Moses Ma, let's hear what you have to say about the technological singularity. From ChatGPT to driverless cars, we need to be hopeful about progress. So this is written before Eliezer Yudkowsky is trying to pivot tech people to being technological Luddites, advanced technological Luddites. Stimulating a part of the brain associated with positive emotion and motivation may affect healing. That's the first bullet point. We know we're off to a good start. We must celebrate the ingenuity that drives progress, but in a balanced way. Okay? Ingenuity driving progress. That's not quite as big of a boner as the first one, but creating, maybe it is worse, creating an abundant future for all is easier if we can pull our oars in the same direction. This publication in the United States, it's run for profit as a corporate parent, so are they pulling people all in the same direction? Hell no. But they'll say that. The futurist Ray Kurzweil defines the singularity as a future event during which the pace of technological change will be so rapid, its impact so deep that human life will be irreversibly transformed. You are living in that time, my friend, and if you are not telling people to use advanced technology at this moment to build a humane and sustainable economic system, to join together, ultimately, as much as possible, as much as you are physically inclined, as much as you are inclined or physically capable of becoming a collectivist, technologically mediated hive mind. That's the social system that I suggested would be a more substantive kind of collectivism than what was experienced in the 20th century. But unless you are doing fundamentally these things, you are just being that liberal douchebag from the first part of the show, who is by their inaction supporting fascists killing the planet. And I don't have a lot of hope for you. Almost all of you are that person. Even the people, even the tech people who call themselves techno-socialists are really overwhelmingly that person. Even the communists who kind of enjoy a communist aesthetic and talk about a revolution in idealistic terms, but shy away from talking about what's unfolding now in the early 21st century, are some kind of liberal rot in the collective. The idea is that change will hit with such fury that humans simply won't be able to react effectively. Particularly if these things are operating in service to fascist power and wholly controlled sectors by techno-fascists, as they are in the West, but not elsewhere in the world. That you will get hit. That's why Elon Musk, a broken clock, is right about this, using advanced interfaces to mediate this set of problems. That's to say, you getting on top of this giant tsunami that's coming of superintelligence by becoming more integrated into that, using things like Neuralase. There are options already on the table, prototypes developed, that do not involve surgery, that could harness this in much the same way. So a hat that you can take off, much like a cool snake hat, maybe it'll have a snake on it. No more uncomfortable, I think, than this hat, which it's getting warmer in Arizona, so I'm going to be sweating when I'm wearing this hat. So you should capitalize on all of this. That's to say, you should be advocating for substantive changes well beyond what's occurring, and the unifying of humankind to using emerging technology in a more correct way, and not in the fascist way that's being used in the United States and elsewhere. Machines could cross the thresholds and become smarter than human beings. It seems that they are crossing that threshold, which could cause things like massive layoffs, mass hysteria, like saying you should bomb computer shops, and maybe even mass suicides. Artificial superintelligence could trick people into doing some pretty devious, some pretty dastardly things. Kurzweil predicted that it will happen by 2045. Should humanity fear the singularity? Are we heading towards a dystopic world run by robot overlords that will enslave humanity? Yeah. If you're in the United States, that's your future. If you're living somewhere else, maybe not. But Moses Ma says, I don't think so. I want to tell you about a recent scientific breakthrough which provides a Gedanken experiment for preparing for the singularity. There's some new research about the use of gene therapy for anti-aging. The researcher David Sinclair, professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School, did an experiment to artificially age lab mice by making temporary cuts in their DNA that mimic the low-grade continuous breaks in chromosomes that mammalian cells experience every day as we age. And the prospect of universal super longevity is increasingly a possibility, but not under fascist power. Every time that Gennady Stolyarov, a techno-fascist chairperson of the Transhumanist Party, for whom I was the elected presidential candidate in 2020, before I rejected that nomination, every time he opens his mouth, he's talking about this experiment or a few other breakthroughs along these lines. But Gennady Stolyarov, he doesn't even support building a public health service, the mechanism by which people can have ordinary longevity, not radical life extension, but ordinary life extension, up to or beyond 80 years. The United States has a life expectancy below 80 years now because of our failure to do so. And the UK, which had a life expectancy above 80 years, now does have a life expectancy below 80 years because they've weakened their public health service to make it more like the United States, just as they've left the EU to make their country more like the fascist United States. Although the EU itself is the imperial core, effectively, and a few other countries. The United States is a monstrosity all unto itself, and the UK is almost as bad, except it doesn't have quite as many people. Otherwise, it would be just as bad. Quite do what the United States has done with its military-industrial complex, but it's done almost everything it could possibly to be as fascistic as it could, short of just building this horrible behemoth like the United States military-industrial complex. That's super longevity is a distinct possibility. Not for you though. Not even for you. Probably if you're a radical life extensionist advocate, because you are just a fascist sympathizer. You don't have $20 million to throw at this problem of living forever. So the people who do have $20 million to throw at this problem, which is just a few thousand people, they'll get to live forever. So Ray Kurzweil might get to live forever, an unusually long time, let's just say. Peter Thiel and a couple of other those kind of people will get to do that. But you will not. You will be long dead before the fascists ever consider having a public health service to treat aging as a disease, such that all 8 billion of people on Earth could have access to this. And that could be a real possibility. It should have already happened. It could have easily already happened. The artificial intelligence singularity should have already happened. These things have all been held back by the anti-communist West. They're not innovators. All they're doing is capturing valuable assets on behalf of private wealth and hurting everyone else, and that has had a dramatic effect on things like lifespans and quality of life and technological advancement, despite what techno-fascists will tell you that capitalists are drivers of technological advancement. That doesn't really hold up under any scrutiny at all. It's just a CIA talking point that people like Sultan Isfin will repeat 1,000 times a day, and almost every tech person. What are you talking about Gennady Stolyarov and Sultan Isfin? They piss me off. Sultan Isfin has a certain kind of profile, but he's not the national figure that technologists, tech pros, and transhumanists imagine he is. Gennady Stolyarov is kind of nobody, but I mean, so is Ben Zion. But these people are who are literal CIA assets, and all the people in between who are merely just fascist sympathizers. They're all kind of serving the same function of repeating lies about what the West is, what technology is relative to that, and just no different, not substantively different, just in the way that I said that Eliezer Yudkowsky is similar to a much more small-minded person These people are no different just from your drunk Uncle Lou talking about living in the greatest nation on earth. They're just using more sophisticated CIA talking points than drunk Uncle Lou, because drunk Uncle Lou just kind of acquired these through being drunk and stupid, but they are getting text messages with weekly updated talking points to deceive you. So yeah, Moses Ma, he's got some good things to say about the prospect for life extension. You can go ahead and read this article, psychologytoday.com. Moses Ma, Enjoy the Singularity, How to Be Optimistic About the Future, because about 60% of it is about the prospect of radical life extension. But I don't recommend that you read this material unless you are dedicated to the idea of building a public health service that treats aging as a disease. And Moses Ma, who works for a for-profit organization, is not too interested in that. Is he a CIA asset? I don't know. I can only say that a lot of tech orgs operating very much like CIA assets. I don't know Moses Ma. We'll talk about a person who's a person of the Imperial Corps who has done labor on behalf of fascists, but is nowhere, maybe not quite as evil as Elias Yudkowsky. Geoffrey Hinton. This is also from Futurism.com. Geoffrey Hinton, the article is Godfather of AI. Geoffrey Hinton says there's a minor risk it'll eliminate humanity. Again, there's an awful lot of trickery been going into this conversation, because AI eliminating humanity, they're never saying techno-fascists who control AI in the West are going to eliminate humanity in their war against working people. They never say that. They just say this is aliens are going to kill us. You fucking fucks. Stop lying. Is best known as godfather of artificial intelligence. His seminal work on neural networks broke the mold by mimicking the processes of human cognition and went on to form the foundation of machine learning models today. So somebody who you could say made some contribution to the fields underpinning the things like ChatGPT and the things that we talk about a lot on the show. And now, in a lengthy interview with CBS News, Hinton shares his thoughts on the current state of AI, which he fashions to be in a pivotal moment, with the advent of artificial general intelligence looming closer than we'd think. Until quite recently, I thought it was going to be 20 to 50 years before we'd have general purpose AI. I think it may be less than 20 years. AGI is a term that describes a potential AI that could exhibit human or superhuman levels of intelligence, rather than being overtly specialized. An AGI would be capable of learning and thinking on its own to solve a vast array of problems. Everyone talking about this, they're not really talking about it as a tool that could uplift the downtrodden masses and working people on the whole. They're talking about it from a pretty unusual perspective as this independent agent. And that is a techno-fascist trick, a CIA talking point of the kind not dissimilar from the many that I describe on this program, because to obfuscate this is to completely deny the problems of the techno-fascist West. Geoffrey Hinton, not the worst creature of the techno-fascist West, but nevertheless a creature of the techno-fascist West, who is going out of his way to obfuscate this, not in to quite the same degree that loser nerd Elias Yudkowsky is, but pretty much the same playbook. We should be carefully considering its consequences, says Hinton, which may include minor issues of it trying to wipe out humanity. Right? This techno-fascists, in defending their power, and most particularly their only goal, which is to protect private wealth for relatively few wealthy people, in the wake of such powerful things, even to the detriment of those people. Not historically, but in this moment in history, when artificial general intelligence could change things to bring about universal super longevity, even Peter Thiel, if he's $500 million earmarked for universal or for super longevity for himself, even Peter Thiel is not assured of this. He would be more assured of it in a world where techno-communism has won. But all of these people are basically just aggressively hedging their bets. They assume that if they'll be fine, but if they win, they'll get what they want as well. And that is, that is more or less what people like the Transhumanist Party and all of these tech people are doing when they're moving the goalposts and lying about what fascism is. They're just hoping that they'll get what they want either way. So AI is not going to wipe out humanity. The United States, in possession of AI, is going to wipe out humanity. Let's be clear about that. Hinton maintains that the real issue on the horizon is how AI technology that we already have, AGI or not, could be monopolized by power-hungry governments and corporations. The fascist West, the people that are only ones who do these things in really, really harmful ways in decades past. But we'll just throw it out and say that any government is the problem. Any government is not the problem. The imperial core is the problem. Jeffrey Miri will lose its funding if Ilya Zukowski starts saying that fascist governments are the problem. So he can sort of occasionally say that governments could be the problem, but he won't name the United States and the imperial core specifically. It's very reasonable for people to be worrying about these issues now, even though it's not going to happen in the next year or two. People should be thinking about these issues. Luckily, by Hinton's outlook, humanity still has a little bit of breathing room before things get completely out of hand, since current publicly available models are mercifully stupid. We're at this transition point now where ChatGPT is kind of an idiot savant, and it doesn't really understand about truth, because it's trying to reconcile the differing and opposing opinions in its training data. It's very different from a person who tries to have a consistent worldview. If you only think of these things as autonomous agents, and not things that are just think of yourself as this little android guy walking around. You have some kind of androidy things going on, but I'm making a comic book about mech robots to some degree. So imagine now, in the course of the next 15 years, you're growing from being a small android with some advanced capabilities to being a big mech robot with a large number of advanced capabilities. Human actors, are going to be the salvation or the damnation in this set of problems. But none of these experts will pose that or state that in these terms, because that forces the question of the problem of the techno-fascist West itself, which they are intentionally trying to avoid talking about. So thus, you hear people talking about how this is an alien force that we could never understand. It's so asinine. You don't want some big for-profit company deciding what's true, Hinton warned. So that's the final word. At least he says something against for-profit mechanisms in this, which is something that almost no tech person would do. So perhaps he's a little less the bad Godfather of the Godfather movie, and slightly more deserving of the name Godfather. But I'm going to still go with bad Godfather. Well, this has gone on long.